Jacob Fry, we have a yes or no question for you. Yes or no, will you commit to defunding Minneapolis Police Department? What did I say? We don't want no more police. Is that clear? We don't want people with guns toting around in our community, shooting us down. You have an answer? It is a yes or a no. It is a yes or a no. Will you defund the Minneapolis Police Department? All right, be quiet, y'all. Be quiet, because it's important that we actually hear this. It's important that we hear this, because if y'all don't know, he's up for re-election next year. If y'all don't know, he's up for re-election next year. And if he says no, guess what the fuck we gonna do next year? What you say? All right, get the fuck out of here.
In Minneapolis, the mayor responded to the calls for action, saying that he did not support the defunding movement. His response was met with this. And the mayor was booed off stage. His office tells CNN that he is committed to structural reforms, but does not support abolishing or defunding the police.
Whenever you see a Negro bragging about he's the only one in this neighborhood, he's bragging. He's telling you, in essence, I'm surrounded by white folks, you know. I love them and they love me. Oh, yeah, and on his job, I'm the only one on my job. I've been listening to that stuff all my life. And the generation that's coming up, they're not going to be saying that. The generation that's coming up, everybody's going to look like an Uncle Tom to them. And you and I have to learn that in time so that we don't hold that image when our young generation come up and begin to look at it.
Before we begin this Sunday address, if you're not already subscribed to this YouTube channel, go ahead and subscribe now and be sure to hit the notification bell so you can be alerted when a new video drops. Also, if you're already subscribed, check and make sure that YouTube hasn't unsubscribed you. Seems there's not a week that goes by that I don't get at least a dozen people telling me that that's happened. And of course, be sure to give the video a like. The white supremacists hate that. Now, that said, Malcolm said it 50 plus years ago, and it's still true today. Young people had arisen. There was a generation forming, Generation X, who was not going to be tolerating any of this white supremacist nonsense, and they were going to be looking at their elders with very judgmental eyes indeed. When the black media began to agitate over a dozen years ago for the changes that needed to be made, there were a lot of people who thought they were crazy. A lot of people saying, oh, you're talking about that pseudo-revolutionary stuff. Man, that ain't never going to happen. And now it's all coming to pass. The attempted genocide of our people, the need to fight back, and the very principles that we had always espoused now being shown to be the way. We had a lot of opposition. Now we got a lot of imitators. What you saw with that video of Minneapolis Mayor Fry being checked by those young people, that disturbed a lot of white supremacists, particularly the Democrats and Republicans, because for the longest time, they've been playing the political equivalent of good cop, bad cop, where black people are concerned. Oh, these mean Republicans, they're telling you all this stuff that they're going to do. They don't like you. They hate you. These Democrats over here, they're going to be nice. So you might as well go ahead and do what they say. Sure, they're not going to do anything for you, but they're nicer than these Republicans, right? That's what they've been doing. And for a while, it seemed like the scam was working, but you had a generation to say, man, forget about all that fear talk. We don't respond to fear. We respond to tangibles. And you see how the game has been brought to a crashing, screeching halt. What happened to Mayor Fry, the humiliation that he was put through at the hands of black people, you better believe both Democrats and Republicans alike saw that and resented and hated. I told you, black empowerment would not come into its own until black people showed that they could exercise power over white people. Mayor Fry looked like a little child while black people are standing over him, telling him, we're dictating to you what you're going to do. And when he said no, they scolded him and sent him away like a child. You better believe there's a whole lot of white supremacists on both sides of the political aisle who saw that and are equal parts scared and angry about it. See, black people are not supposed to ever be able to stand in judgment of a white person. Black people are never supposed to be able to exercise power over white politicians. And to have black people telling a white politician what he's going to do and also letting him know, hey, next year you're supposed to be running, so you better give the right answer. When he says no, they tell him, get the F out of here, and he's got to do it. They hate that. They resent that. No, the mayor's trying to put on a pathetic front. He's trying to put on a show. Oh, I don't know why they're doing this. He's looking for sympathy for the white media or sympathy from some soft-brained, handkerchief-headed black folks if he can manage it. But this is what I told you about when I said black folks have got to get comfortable bullying white supremacy. We got to get comfortable using sharp elbows on them, showing them we got sharp elbows and we can step on their toes and show them we don't give a damn. We're here for our tangibles. This ain't about friendship. This ain't about loving everybody. This is about getting what's ours, what we are owed. And we're not waiting to see if Mayor Fry is going to be very polite and if we ask him very nicely and if we just do what he says. No, forget about that. That ain't a democracy. A democracy is the people tell you what it's going to be and then you do it. What kind of public servant tells his boss, tells the people who he takes orders from what he will and will not do? Because that's what Mayor Fry did. What kind of public servant tells his employer what he is and isn't going to do? He's sitting here telling them, yeah, I heard what you just said. I'm not going to do it. What kind of public servant is that? And the white media is not scolding him for that. Whether you like it or not, the people told him what they expect him to do. He decided he's not going to do it. And the people let him know, in that case, then you might as well go ahead and start packing your bags. You're not long for that office that you're holding. This is called putting an agenda on the table. And the white media is also scared, too, because they didn't have any of their hand-picked, cherry-picked Negroes out there to steer the conversation and control it. No Simone Mamie Sanders. No John Pierre, whatever the hell her name is, that Joe Biden put on the payroll. These black-splaining mammies that Joe Biden put on the payroll, so their job is supposed to be to do damage control for him. Now you see why Joe Biden doesn't talk to black folks. He always has to have a controlled environment where he knows who's going to be asking the question, usually some lifelong Democrat shill planted in the audience. It's a tried and true tactic. What Mayor Fry did was very risky. Apparently what he thought was being a white guy and all of these phony baloney press conferences where he gives a couple of sympathetic words and people making it clear. Words don't mean a damn thing. We've been down this road too many times. Now it's time for action. It's time to talk about punishing the police. I'm not punishing the police. Then you ain't going to be mayor now, are you? If you do not punish the police, then we will go and find someone who will. And the white supremacists are scared and angry because they see this building ain't a damn thing they can do about it. And they know that this is going to become habit forming. White supremacy absolutely requires a gang of organized thugs who the state gives legal immunity to kill at will. They require that in order to keep white supremacy in place, in order to keep the American racial order in place. It requires violence. It cannot be done through shaming language. It cannot be done merely through legislation alone. It cannot be done through any sort of rationale or argument because white supremacy is inherently irrational and it's indefensible. Hence, there is no argument that can be used to promote or protect it. You require fiat violence. And that fiat violence, you got to have a monopoly on it. And that's where the enforcement arm of white supremacy comes in. And I got to give credit to Tariq. He was the one who posted that video on his Twitter feed, and that's how it came to my attention. It is good to see that. And yes, I know some of you are going to point out that there were some people in the audience, some of those folks who had the microphone, who had on the Trans Lives Matter shirt. Look, as far as it goes, I'm not going to start majoring in the minors on these things. The point is that this even happened. That's the important thing. And the point is to stay on message. You can have whatever kind of t-shirt you want. It's what you say and what you do that I'm concerned about. As long as you ain't trying to steer the conversation towards some straight Trans Lives Matters line and away from black people getting murdered in the streets. Under those circumstances, I guess it is what it is. But speaking of which, you know what else I didn't see? I didn't see the usual civil rights retreads and these 60s burnouts, these fossils from a bygone era. You didn't have John, I spit blood and silver, Lewis out there. You didn't have any of the creeps, clowns from the Congressional Black Talkers, no Messy Jesse, no Al Sharpton. See, I guess they figured that there weren't enough cameras for their taste there. So while they were busy hiding behind George Floyd's casket, the real soldiers were in the streets putting in that work. And the white media noticed that too. Oh, you better believe that this is an unsanctioned rally that took place. The Democrats didn't sanction this, which means that they don't control it. They don't control the mic. So the people might be saying some stuff that they ought not say. We're trying to control how things go. Oh, sure, let people make a little bit of noise and let them demand some reforms, as long as we contain the conversation. We're trying to contain it. That's what I told you the white media is attempting to do. They're attempting to forward a policy of containment, trying to contain the discussion. We're not talking about defunding the police. We're not talking about actually having laws in the books that say to the police, if a person who's arrested dies in your custody, or if they die as a result of something that you do to them, that's automatic first-degree murder, automatic. See, that's the conversation that they don't want. And you're not going to be having any of these clowns forwarding that. That's the reason why we have to do it. All of these black folks pretending like they're on the side of justice. People are starting to show exactly where they stand. People are being forced to commit. That's the reason why I don't have a problem with these aggressive policies like defunding the police. Let's see who actually wants to impose a penalty on the police and who's just out here talking. The white media is trying to figure out how to change the conversation, how to change the subject. For the last week, they've been bringing on a steady drumbeat of mostly LGBT spokespeople who always do the same bait and switch. They start off talking about police violence against black and brown people. And the black community and brown communities, people of color, and police violence. And it's no different really than the violence that is expressed that's shown to the transgender community and homophobia in the black community and such. That's what they always do. Just like they did with Black Lives Matter, start to pivot this into an LGBT thing. And the white media is not leaving that up to chance. They're flooding the zone with people like D. Ray McKesson and that so-called human rights campaign organization. But when you look at their website, the only human rights they're interested in is LGBT rights. It's not about stopping black people from being killed merely for being black. It's about transgender bathrooms and making sure that 5-year-olds are taught how to perform homosexual acts. That's the only human rights they seem to be interested in. As far as stopping police violence goes, well, police violence isn't really our number one priority. The only violence we're concerned about is transgender, LGBT, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, fine, be that as it may, we're not talking about that, though. We're talking about the violence being enacted against black people. What about that? Well, it's really no different than transgender violence. This is the white media trying to set up a narrative, trying to do a pivot. And all lives matter shtick. Well, violence from the police is really a concern for all communities, not just the black community. It's something that affects all communities. You have to water down the message, dilute the message. Let's talk about everyone. You better leave the white supremacists understand that that's exactly what's happening here. Because as long as we're talking about violence against transgenders and such, we're not talking about violence against black people. Let's pivot the conversation away from police violence against black people, and let's talk about alleged black violence against homosexuals or transgenders, whatever. That's what they're trying to do. And this is meant to make it where the subject's going to be black people here. Oh, we got to make it where black people are the bad guys. You've no doubt seen that video of the Buffalo Police Department buffaloing their way over a 75-year-old white man. They knocked him down. He fell back on the pavement, busted the back of his head, blood pooling everywhere, and they just walked past him, refused to even help. Oh, I know you saw that video because the white media wanted you to see it. There's plenty of videos of the police brutalizing people, especially more videos of them suffocating black men in particular, but also black women as well. There's plenty of videos like that, but the white media is not trying to spread that around. They're trying to spread that Buffalo video. Why? Because Buffalo City, New York has a black police chief and a black police commissioner. Now, you would think that they would be concerned about New York City. But New York City, where all of the police violence, the majority of it is taking place these days against the protests, the New York Police Department has a white police commissioner and a white police chief. Bad optics. We're not trying to perpetuate this whole white violence against black people under color of law thing. We're not trying to do that. We're trying to change the narrative. We got to put it on black people. We're going to do it in stages. We're going to start off by saying that police violence is ubiquitous. It's universal. It's all over the place. It's not just against black people. Why? It's against everyone. And they'll say that, well, you see, the reason that there's so many people speaking out about police violence against black people is because everyone's subjected to it, not just the black community. That's the pivot. That's the thin end of the wedge. You start off by saying that everybody's against it because of the police wronging them. And then next thing you know, well, that being the case, that also means black people are just as complicit as these white supremacists, right? Right? That's where it's ultimately supposed to go. That's where it always goes. Whether it's Black Lives Matters, whether it's Me Too, that's the template they like to use. Now, the black police commissioner of Buffalo, he suspended the two thugs with badges who brutalized that old white man. And apparently the DA of Erie County is bringing charges, however meek they may be. But you had about 57 other Buffalo police officers who decided that they would resign en masse from the crowd control unit that they were supposed to be part of. This is their way of sending a message. If we're not going to be able to police the way we want to, and if you're going to have it where the law actually applies to us, then we're not going to do the job at all. We're not going to do anything at all. That's the enforcement on white supremacy, showing everybody that they're fighting for their right to brutalize people with impunity. And the white media is trying to put a black face on the failure to stop police violence. You don't have anybody condemning the police for that. Nobody's saying to the police, hey, you work for the taxpayers, remember? Since when does a public servant get to tell his employer what he will and will not do? You don't have anybody condemning them. Instead, it's treated as, oh my, the Buffalo police, you had 57 guys resign from that crowd control unit. Well, maybe there's something to it. You're not hearing a word about the New York Police Department. You're not hearing a word about the silence from the NYPD police chief or police commissioner, have you? Andrew Cuomo, who the white media tried to portray as being on the short list for sainthood, he's been backing the police through all this. In fact, he was doing a straight police line, just how all these stories about brutality, that's not true. He actually said, these stories, they're not true. Until he saw the video of that old white man in Buffalo. It had to be a white man. So you saw a white man with his head busted open on the concrete, then all of a sudden you had Andrew Cuomo change his tune. However meekly he may have done so. I guess he forgot that Buffalo is in New York State, or perhaps he forgot that he's supposed to be the governor of New York State, one or the other. But this is supposed to be your white liberal, isn't it? The white media was every day letting you know that, oh, this guy, maybe he's going to run for president. Oh, the nation's taking their cues from New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, and he has emerged as a leader, a national leader in the face of the national pandemic. That's how the white media was trying to frame him. Yeah, but you notice how they're not framing this. Not the right time yet, but they're figuring that if they bide their time, it will be. See, what the white media is trying to do is to wait us out. All of this refusing to come up the middle and talk about the punishment for the police, they see people talking about it, and the white media is going, hell no. We're for the fourth branch of government. We are part of the white supremacist apparatus. We are the official mouthpiece for white supremacist power in America. And with that being the case, we are not about to sit here and say that the enforcement on white supremacy ought to be broken or even reined in. White media knows exactly what their job is. It is to run interference forward, to defend and to sanctify and justify the brutality carried out by the white supremacists with badges in order to maintain white supremacy. That's their job. Because you have to have that in any society in order to perpetuate a system of oppression and corruption. On some level, you got to have a dedicated apparatus to tell people that all of this brutality, is completely and thoroughly justified, or at the very least, well, you can't. There is an apparatus to do something about it. Why? You can complain to your congressperson or complain to your city council, or you can complain to your DA. Well, is anything going to happen? No, but you do have the ability to complain about it. No one will stop you from complaining. In other words, nothing's going to happen, and they know that. And the white media thinks they're slick. By making black politicians the face of the failure to oversee the police, the white media is attempting to help push a narrative that police brutality is not a racial issue at all. Why, there's as many black police officials and politicians who have failed to rein in the police as there are white ones. That's a lie, of course, but that's the way they're going to try to portray it, because what people see the most is what they tend to remember. People tend to remember most what they saw last. And if you show them a nonstop parade of black people who you point to and say, there was police brutality, and here's a black police chief and a black police commissioner and a black mayor, we're all in the cities and towns where these police brutality incidents occurred, then people look and go, well, hell, you shouldn't be saying anything about these white police chiefs then. That's what it's meant to do. The white media knows exactly the propaganda that they're forwarding. They know exactly what these images are meant to infer. This is the law enforcement equivalent of saying we're all a little bit racist. This is the lie that the white media and politicians have been telling ever since the 60s. Oh, this police violence, it's not really racial when you think about it. Why, it's just a flaw in the system, and we need to work on it, and we've made progress. New York City banned the use of chokeholds back in the early 90s. That didn't save Eric Garner, and it hasn't saved a number of other black folks. The police have been using chokeholds ever since, without stop, because they know that they're not going to be punished. See, the problem is you got these DAs who, when it comes to the police, they act as de facto members of the defense. I told you about how the composition of a jury is key to getting a conviction. They understand that. So you got the DA deciding, I'm going to help the defense every way that I can. I'm going to try to jam up the indictment at the grand jury, like they did with Darren Wilson. Go ahead and tell the grand jury, you don't have to indict. Yeah, I know the evidence is damning, but you don't have to indict. That's what they did, according to leaks from the grand jury in Ferguson. That's exactly what Bob McCullough's office did. Told the grand jurors, you don't have to indict. And what a surprise they didn't, because you got even the DA saying don't do it. And the same thing happens around the country. Every time a cop gets accused of a crime, if they're forced to have to indict, the DA immediately starts acting as a de facto member of the defense, and so does the judge. You're up against a organized defense for police brutality against black people. That's the reason why these guys aren't going to prison. It's not that the DAs can't put them away, it's because the DAs are refusing to do so. But the white media wants to stay as far away from talking about the DAs as possible. They try to treat the DAs as if, oh, the DAs are doing their best. The hell they are. Nobody's talking about Mike Freeman and the fact that there was a letter written saying that the people had no faith in this guy. They lost confidence and trust in him. The white media is not pushing that. It's a matter of, well, we're not here to question or undermine or otherwise destabilize the institutions of white supremacy. We're here to reinforce them against all enemies, especially the black ones. The Buffalo police, who resigned from crowd control, they would never have done so if the two officers had been black. If it had been two black officers who knocked that old white man down, first of all, they would have been rushing to the old white man's aid. And you better believe that the police unions would have been doing the same thing they did against Mohammed Noor. They didn't circle the wagons for him. Nobody resigning on his behalf. No fraternal order of police, or rather the police federation, as they call it in Minnesota. You didn't have the police union sitting there taking up for Mohammed Noor. Nope. That Negro was on his own. They wanted to make it perfectly clear. If you're a black person who harms a white person, we're not sticking up for you. The Homer, Louisiana police, they didn't circle the wagons for those two black cops who accidentally killed a white child while defending themselves from his felonious thug father. When the cops accused of harming someone are black and the person they kill is white, the cops never resign in mass. There's no mass resignations. You don't have any fire and fury from the fraternal order of police. The police unions, their response is always muted whenever black cops are accused of harming a white person. So let's understand, this is not about police in general. This is about white cops in specific when they harm black people. Now, in a pinch, if they harm white people, they'll, the gears of justice move slowly. But when it comes to black people, the gears of justice don't just stop, they go in reverse. White media is not about to talk about that. Oh, they're talking about the charges against Derek Chauvin, but what they're not doing is they're not educating the public on Derek Chauvin's history. Guy's got over a dozen complaints from the public. He was instrumental in the killing of at least one other black person, but the white media is not talking about that. They're treating it as they're treating the murder of George Floyd as some sort of anomaly, some sort of isolated incident. They're not telling you about the other complaints, because if they do, there's a matter of people are going to be looking and go, whoa, these complaints were substantiated. They start to treat the complaints like gossip. Well, there were some people who said some stuff, but because the white media doesn't follow up on it, the public gets the misimpression that, well, there must not be anything to it, otherwise the white media would go into detail. That's deliberate. The white media didn't say a word about the multiple civil suits against Daniel Pintalio for racial profiling and police brutality. Didn't say a word about it. Tried to make it seem as if his murdering of Eric Garner, well, that was just an isolated incident. That was a one-off. White media is beginning the process. Containment. We're not going to talk about the other three thugs who collaborated and helped to carry out the murder of George Floyd. We're not talking about them either. White media is not even being subtle about it. There's going to be a white media blackout, or rather whiteout, where the issue of the murder of George Floyd is concerned. We're not talking about the cops at all. Oh, the cops here are not the issue. We're going to sit here and give some insincere, phony baloney sympathy for George Floyd until they can try to find something that they can use to either justify the murder, or they're just going to stop talking about it altogether if that fails. That's what the template is. If you can't find anything on the dead black guy to dirty him up with, then just change the subject. Talk about something else. The election, the man on the moon, the price of rice in China, but start talking about the dead black guy, because sooner or later people are going to start looking at the white guys who killed him and say, well, shouldn't they be punished? And what else do we know about them? So yeah, they're trying to control the conversation. This is the part that the white media is not telling you. They're not emphasizing it, and they're not going to. Because to emphasize this would be to undermine the unity and the cohesion that the police nationally desperately need right now. Right now, the thugs in blue, they happen to be under extraordinary, unprecedented pressure. Right now, we got the bastards under pressure. And that being the case, when people are under pressure, especially a bunch of rogues and thieves and murderers and cutthroats, there's no honor among these scumbags. They start facing a serious threat of punishment, they're going to start rolling over on each other if the threat is serious. And that being the case, the blue wall crumbles. So the blue wall only works as long as there is blanket immunity. As long as there is blanket immunity from law, then the blue wall holds. You start creating an environment, though, where it's going to be, well, what if we can drive wedges between these guys? See if there's any of them who'll crack. Man, these scumbags, they'll drop a dime on each other in a heartbeat. You see, the white media clearly thinks that the heat's starting to die down, or at least we've reached the zenith now. It's not going to get any hotter than this. So as far as they're concerned, this is the time to start slowly, carefully, quietly beginning the drip, drip. Little by little, we're going to begin to turn the conversation to black people. We're going to try to focus it on black people somehow. We got to make black people the subject here. We got to misdirect the energy away from punishing the white supremacists, and let's start talking in circles again. So they've been flooding the airwaves and online spaces with LGBT activists who are masquerading as black empowerment types. They're as if they're concerned about police brutality against black people when they're not. They weren't talking like this a year ago, and they won't be talking like this a year from now. But this is who the white media wants to put out there and make sure it's a black one or perhaps a biracial one at most. But we got to find a way to make it seem as if this is coming from the black community. And don't be focusing on those rallies and protests taking place in the street. Definitely not those angry black folks online. That black media definitely will be focusing on them. Family, we've been going in circles like this for decades because the white media has always used their massive presence to derail the conversation. And we're seeing it yet again. America's favorite mammy, Oprah Winfrey, she's getting in on the act. She's putting on yet another show. Gee, last time we heard from Orca, it was because Apple had put her up to going some broadside attack against Russell Simmons under the guise of Me Too. So obviously she's their go-to bootlick when it comes to trying to attack black people and undermine what it is that we're doing. I mean, this is just shameless at this point. Totally shameless. And of course, because she's a coward, she can't stand on her own. So she's invited 6 other do-nothing safe bootlick Negroes to join her. And all of them have a rock-solid track record of misrepresenting the black community's interests, if not fighting against our interests altogether. She's put together a star-studded team of bootlicks, sellouts, and con men, none of whom has done a damn thing for us. Among her gallery of rogues will be Stacey Abrams. You got Agent Duvernay, of course. No idiot jamboree is complete without her. Reverend William Barber II, or as I like to call him, the Hunchback of Chicago, and the appropriately named Charles Blow. I think, of course, it bears noting that at least three of those individuals are LGBT, four if you include Oprah. So once again, we're talking about black people's issues, but we're getting the LGBT sphere to do all the talking. So the fix is clearly in. We already know what they're going to be talking about, that police need better training and most cops are good. In fact, all cops are good. These Negroes need to stop complaining so much. You just have a few bad apples and they'll throw in a few meaningless mentions of black history and black people's feelings. And the reason for that is if you're dumb enough to watch Oprah with even a scintilla of credibility, if you're going to give her any credibility whatsoever, clearly you're either a hood rat or a dusty dude, so you can be counted on to be pacified with meaningless gibberish. Oh, and of course, you better believe she's going to have some phony white liberals. I'm sure Tim Wise will make an appearance, have some police chiefs and such. But what she's not going to be doing is to be having the victims of police violence doing the talking and saying, here's what needs to be done to stop the police, because they will definitely be staying away from that subject. Oh, they'll be talking about a whole bunch of scattershot fringe nonsense that has nothing to do with nothing. But the one thing they definitely will not be talking about is punishment. That's not going to be a topic of conversation for Oprah's little soiree. That's not going to come up because her entire mission is to steer the conversation away from that. Oprah had no problem whatsoever attacking Michael Jackson when the man was dead and unable to defend himself. And she did it because a couple of blatantly opportunistic liars told her to. By the way, I'm not talking about Safe Chuck and that other idiot who accused Jackson of molesting them. The two blatantly opportunistic liars I'm talking about are HBO and Sky News. That's who's pulling Oprah's strings. But Oprah won't be condemning the police. You can bet on that. See, she'll condemn Michael Jackson. She ain't condemning the police. And having Agent Duvernay as part of the lineup, that's deliberate. What the hell qualifies Agent Duvernay to be talking on a subject like this? Oh, she made a TV show about the Central Park Five. At best, she can claim to be an artist, but the thing is, she ain't no social scientist. She's not a political scientist. She's not a social commentator. She's a director in Hollywood. So that's where she needs to stay. But when it comes to black people's issues, you can never be too unqualified to speak. Hell, you had people like that Shockey character in the 70s. This guy was not a geneticist. He was not an educator. He was not an anthropologist. The guy happened to be a material scientist. His claim to fame was that he created the transistor or something like that, something for radios. But he called himself thinking that he was qualified to say that black people were inherently inferior to white ones. What qualifies him to say that? Well, he's a white man. And, truth be told, that's all you need. When it comes to talking about black people or on black people's issues, you can bring that out every nincompoop, every nabob, every fool, clown, idiot, and moron. They can go ahead and throw in their 2 cents. They're more than welcome to. From the village idiot to the class clown, it doesn't matter if you ain't got the sense that God gave a cantaloupe. You're more than welcome when it comes to black people. You're more than welcome to have a white media provided platform to spew whatever nonsense, lies, and untruths you want. It doesn't matter. You're talking about black people, so in fact, the more lies and untruths, the better. And you better believe that none of Oprah's panelists are going to be emphasizing that black people have a right to defend themselves against police violence. None of them are going to be saying that the public must recognize this right and must cherish this right and embrace it and get used to it. There will be no bullying of white supremacy taking place. Nobody making it clear that if the police are trying to harm you or kill you, you have every right to defend yourself. Nobody is going to be celebrating and lauding Michael Walker. They might give a passing mention to Breonna Taylor, but you better believe ain't none of them going to be talking about, and that Michael Walker guy, he was right. The DA better not try to jam him up again. He was in the right. Nobody's going to be saying that. You won't be hearing that kind of talk. And just in case the conversation even accidentally seems to even hint to threaten to go in that direction, you better believe there'll be somebody willing to hide behind the casket of Dr. Martin Luther King. And that's how they'll handle that. Dr. King said this, Dr. King said, they'll go ahead and misuse his words and actions for the sake of propping up their own cowardice and corruption. This will be a big media circus provided by Oprah, with some familiar faces from cable TV meant to lead us back to the same old circles of inaction and empty talk. Another lie making the rounds, however, is all of these phony images that we see of police kneeling for the public. This is the same thing they did with Ferguson and Baltimore, showing people, always black people, hugging the police and shaking their hands without the police being required to do anything to earn it. And that is blasphemous. You had that young brother Dante Hart and his siblings, those two white supremacists who happen to be LGBT, by the way. They murdered him and his siblings, and they killed themselves, but not before they told him to get out there and hug the police. White supremacists love to be abusing black children, especially if it's black children who they're supposed to be foster parents to. They love that mess. Using black children as props to try to whitewash and clean up the image of the thugs in blue. But tragically, there's a lot of black folks who you don't have to force them to do it at all. Just make sure there's some cameras there and they'll act complete idiots, helping to justify murdering black people. They'll be glad to be hugging the police and shaking the police's hands and dancing with the police. And, oh, I love these guys. We got to stand by the police. There's idiots on both sides of the ideological spectrum who do that. Right-wing morons who think that they're going to get a guest spot on Fox News, and left-wing idiots who think that they're going to get a pat on their head from the Huffington Post or from CNN or something. Black folks know what it is that the white supremacists expect them to do. After 500 years, we know exactly what level of moronic, suicidal denial we have to be prepared to engage in order to get a pat on the head from the white supremacist powers that be. Black folks know the game. But here's what white media is not going to show you.
The sight of police officers taking a knee in sympathy with protesters this week has been taken as a sign that finally change is coming. This was the scene in Buffalo, New York on Wednesday. Yet one of those same officers knocked over an elderly protester the following day as others who had also knelt with protesters walked by. Now, 57 Buffalo police officers have resigned because of the disciplinary action taken against 2 officers as a result of the incident. They argue those officers who've been suspended were just doing their job. And that question, what exactly is the job of a police officer, might be a good place to start if police violence is truly to be addressed.
Yeah, the same Buffalo Police Department that was kneeling with folks. Oh, we're with the community. We're against police brutality. As soon as they got up and dusted themselves off, they immediately said, all right, who we going to mess up next? Who we going to jack up next? Yeah, they showed just how much they had changed. Oh, the Buffalo PD, they had turned over a new leaf. They had discovered religion. Oh, the department had changed. They were ready to embrace reform. They're on the side of the public. Why, you had us all wrong. We're not a bunch of brutal thugs. And the second they get through doing their little photo op, off they run to find the next person to brutalize or kill. You know, there's a term for this kind of media manipulation. It's called propaganda. So that's what the white media is doing, pushing some world-class weapons-grade propaganda on the public. Oh, we're going to show the public pictures of the police kneeling, but we're not going to be linking it to the fact that the same cops who were kneeling a moment ago, as soon as they got up, they immediately started brutalizing the public. They don't link the two. So it's trying to create the idea that there's some sort of confusion. Well, some cops are on the right. They're on the right side and others are not. And no, you're up against an organized offense. The police conduct seminars nationwide. The exact same liars with law degrees who teach the police what lies to say whenever they murder a black person. Oh, the Supreme Court ruled in 1984 that such and such, so you just say you're scared for your life and that gets you off the hook. They coach the police on what to say. They got their little seminars and meetings paid for, of course, by the Fraternal Order of Punks. I mean, police. That's what they do. They pay for these things. And of course, because you got police chiefs who transfer from one police department or sheriff's department to the next, you got so many thugs in blue who also transfer from one police department or sheriff's department to the next. Tim Lohman, who murdered Tamir Rice, he had been with the Independence Police Department just before he got fired from there. And they didn't call it a firing, but he got fired because of the fact that he was clearly emotionally unstable, and that did not stop the Cleveland Police Department from saying, man, you're perfect to work here. Betty Shelby, she's been with at least 3 police departments. After she murdered Terrence Crutcher, she immediately got picked up by a sheriff's department. These guys bounce all over the place, but you got people like the president's national security advisor saying that there's no systemic racism in police. Yeah, these guys are circulating all throughout the same police departments nationwide. The same cops who are murdering people in New York pop up in Skokie, Illinois, and then pop up in Oklahoma, then they pop up in Wyoming. They're all over the place. The exact same guys in all these departments circulating like so much fecal matter in a toilet bowl, but there's nothing systemic about that. So, family, we got to push back and push back hard. The congressional black talkers and all of these phony baloney overnight activists that the white media is trying to invent out of thin air. I told you about how the Griot was doing that mess. They were picking a whole bunch of LGBT folk, and you had Byron Allen using his website for the sake of pushing the lie that, oh, these are new black leaders. He was trying to manufacture his own antidote to the black media. He was trying to manufacture his own analog for the new voices of black media. These guys were supposed to be the opposite of it. They were supposed to drown us out. You see how well that went. You see how long that lasted. So since the black bootlick failed, you got white supremacy going, guess we got to do our dirty work ourselves. So they're trying to do the exact same thing. Since they couldn't get Byron Allen to sell the soap, since that failed, they figured they're going to use their megaphone and it will work this time, hopefully. We got to prove the bastards wrong. And by the way, if you have not watched TBA's broadcast from last night, you really need to. You absolutely need to, because it was, in a word, fire. Jason Black's broadcast last night about phony opposition, real distraction, he was given the breakdown about not only this phalanx of phonies that the white media is trying to trot out to speak for us because they're trying to change the conversation, but also pointing out how brothers like himself and Tariq started the movement to start doing mass bailouts for all of these freedom fighters who are being falsely incarcerated. These are political prisoners that you have here. The United States is doing banana republic crap en masse. These are freedom fighters who are being made into political prisoners. But you got brothers like Jason and Tariq who are doing the right thing. They're putting money behind where their mouths are. They're putting money behind the message. And you better believe police departments and sheriff departments are noticing this. The white media definitely knows it because they have incestuous ties with the police. After all, they are the official spokespersons for the white police. And this is something the white supremacy is taking note of. They do not want this to become habit forming. The idea that if a black person is accused of police, you attacked a police officer or you harmed a police officer, God dang it, that's automatic. That's automatic first degree whatever. They're used to that being an automatic paper process. And what's happening is you got some people using paper to stop the paper process. Oh, yeah, you got some black celebrities who are jumping on the bandwagon, mostly for a photo op. They're going to get in front of the cameras, get their photo op, and that'll enable them to say something interesting when they go to the next cheese, croissant, and cocaine party up in the hills. That'll enable them to have something to talk about, because that's all they're there for. They weren't here a year ago. They won't be here a week from now. So once the white media gets through trying to make it seem like this was them when they came late to the party, the black media will still be here doing the work. And as it continues, the white media at some point is going to find themselves forced to confront the issue. They're not going to be mentioned in the black media. They're terrified to do that, and rightly so. But they're going to be forced to confront the issue that, man, it seems like every time someone's accused, the police accuse someone of doing something to the police, they have a ready supply of supporters giving them money to do so. How long will this go on? Is this going to be the new normal? God willing. God willing. This is why I talked about a black legal defense fund years ago. A lot of people thought that I was crazy when I first proposed it. Man, that ain't no real solution. Black legal defense fund. What the hell that's supposed to be? They ain't no real solution, brother. That's a non-starter, but they ain't no practical solution. A black legal defense fund, they ain't practical. When I proposed it, a lot of people thought that it was a useless gesture. That's very interesting. Because now a lot of those people who were in the comment sections or who otherwise were poo-pooing the idea, now they're out here cheerleading. They're out here cheering for it. Now they're not supporting it, but they're cheering for it. So what does that tell you? When I was talking about a black legal defense fund, I understand that the main thing that stops a lot of black folks when they're confronted with police violence against them is because of the fact that they're also thinking, well, if I defend myself, the next thing you know, the cops either they're going to try to kill me or they're going to have me arrested and have me killed at the station, or I'm going to get 50 to life or what have you. The deck's stacked against me. They hesitate because they're thinking about the legal ramifications. We cannot allow a system written by white supremacists for white supremacists to legally sanction the killing of black people. We cannot allow that to hamstring black people from protecting themselves. It's time for us to forward a conversation of black self-defense. The thing is, against a system that is top to bottom stacked against you, it's going to require resources in order to enforce those rights. If Walter Scott had had the means to defend his life the day that Michael Slager murdered him, he would have been fully justified. If Amber Geiger called herself pulling an ambush on a Kenneth Walker instead of a Botham Jean, he would have been fully justified. We got to get past this white media smokescreen, this white media narrative of, well, a black person has to justify when they defend themselves. They have to justify it. And well, there is no such thing as you defending yourself. If you're black, it's never a case of self-defense when you're black. That's going to have to stop. But it's going to be up to black people to stop it. And you don't do that by raising your hand and asking for permission to protect yourself. You do not accomplish that by trying to figure out if you can get good white liberals like Mayor Fry of Minneapolis to discover religion and see the light. Can we get you to see that the police are a death squad murdering black people and that action is going to have to be taken to treat them like any other terrorist organization? What do you do with the terrorist organization? You find a way to go after their funding, attack their finances. You don't sit there and ask him to do what is right. You tell him you're going to do what's right or we'll get you out of here and find someone else who will. If you got police who decide they're going to brutalize people in the streets, first thing that happens is you secure serious prison time for the ones who do that. And if anybody calls themselves, I'm going to resign in protest, you tell them that we're going to kick your raggedy behind out of the police station and we'll have you replaced before your ass hits the concrete. Zero tolerance for white supremacist violence. That's how you solve it. Zero tolerance. That's where the conversation's going, and the white media is desperately trying to derail it. You never hear these LGBT spokespeople talking about punishment. They're not going to, because that's the whole point. The point is, let's manufacture some safe Negroes who will say anything except for that. Now, whether or not they're successful will come down entirely to what you and I do. This fight cannot be won by just 3 black men alone, no matter how dedicated they are. The white media contrive their distraction campaigns, but ultimately we've got more resources and a hell of a lot more morale than they've got. So we're the ones who are going to have to pick up the standard and understand that this is our fight. Destroying white supremacy, breaking the enforcement arm of white supremacy, that is not merely the duty of the black media. It is the responsibility and the duty and the glory of us all. Before we begin this Sunday evening address, if you're not